I roll. That way nobody won't understand or know what I have or possess. That way they won't have to be sitting back lurking and try to rob from me because I pity the fool that does that. I have a lot of people around me, positive energy, positive speaking, positive believing, until that energy is broken. And then there's consequences behind that action. See, I don't care about all that. But what I do care about is protecting my family and providing for them. But what's I'm gonna do? I got a beautiful life, man. I got a happy life. I'm a happy being. Only time y'all see me enraged is when I turn into the bronze mama. But this is the week of the fight. This is the time for it to happen, to everything to come out. I feel it, bro. You can't feel the power.
Deontay,
energy. Oh,
Deontay,
goodness.
Radio Rahim.
Oh,
listen, man,
goodness.
you said that your people have been fighting for 400 years.
Man, your peoples too.
So I just want you to explain what you mean by that.
You know what I'm talking about. Y'all all know what I'm talking about, man. Don't sit up here and try to bait.
Explain it. Not everybody knows what you're talking about.
Radio Rahim, I don't have to explain what's understood, man. You know what I mean by that. You know what I said by that. I ain't got to go further. And if anybody don't understand that, then God be with them. Go look up the history. Go look up the history. Shit, don't everybody believe in Google? Go Google that shit. See what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, man. You know what. I dare you to sit up there and say, explain. You know what I'm talking about, man. He's fighting people. You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day. You just sit here and you don't know what I'm talking about? Man, I'm out of here, bro. Let's go. Come on, let's go. Let's go, man. Let's go, man.
For talking political.
Radio Rahim with Deontay Wilder.
Come on, quick slide.
Okay, no, give it to me now. Radio Rahim with Deontay Wilder. We know what he's talking about. You're welcome, Radio Rahim. It's a pleasure to have you. All right, so that was iconic. You know,
Yeah,
I'm sure you never knew it would be as huge as it ended up.
It's a real moment, and it's something that you can't manufacture. So forget about how it ended up. Even in the minute, on the time that it happened, it was a grabber for everybody. It was a shock for everybody in the room because what people don't know is Deontay and I have had a history of interviews. We are cordial and good friends, at least, up until that point, people were familiar that we had a good relationship. And we talked even about that topic before in a lengthy interview we did in Belfast in Ireland. And so when I asked the question, obviously me being a black American without Deontay Wilder, us having a discussion, of course I know what the reference of 400 years of fighting for black people in America is about. But because at that time he was fighting Tyson Fury, a British boxer. It was the biggest fight as far as global attention of his entire career. And it was Tyson Fury's debut on the American stage at that level, a world championship fight for the WBC heavyweight championship of the world. And there was an opportunity for Deontay to explain what he was referencing when he says 400 years, because you understand it, being a journalist and a black a person from this diaspora, you get where that, as soon as you hear 400 years, you know it references slavery in America. But that is not true of the European. That's not necessarily true of the British or those who do not have a context for 400 years of oppression of black people in America as soon as they hear that phrase. So what I wanted him to do was be a bit more eloquent and explain. But he took it as a affront, as if I was pretending like he needed to explain it to me.
You had no idea about it.
So he had to respond as if I was attacking him. And I don't think maybe that he had the words in the moment really to articulate in an eloquent way what he was talking about. However, he was authentic in his passion. And he came with something that gripped the world because it was really the pain. What you're seeing is pain and anger and frustration and a desire in that moment to really gush. Like it was just flowing out of him. And I happened to be
at the receiving end.
the bullseye. You know,
Interesting,
but what the moment did was more than I had hoped for when asking the question. So you're right about that. The impact, we sit here in Ghana on the continent discussing that moment from 6 years ago.
But you think that was actually what took you there? You were already there with the big fighters, Usyk, Deontay Wilder, Fury. But you think that moment actually elevated you to a certain status?
Sure, that moment, it not only elevated me, sold the fight out. The fight was maybe 2/3 sold at the time after this happened. And this is the Thursday before the Saturday of the fight. Inside of a day and a half, fight is sold out. Wow. This is a moment that it resonates with you, that you're talking about. We're halfway around the world. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It elevated us both.
Interesting. I know you would live with that memory for the rest of your life. Some of us would still...
Well, I don't have to remember because every day someone mentions
mentions it. But come on, let's go a bit personal. Is Radio Rahim the name?
Radio Rahim is the name.
Radio Rahim.
That's right. That's right.
The name.
That's the name. I mean, come on, man. That's the man. That's the name. And let me tell you why. And a lot of people reference the movie Do the Right Thing, which is an iconic film. It definitely had an impression on me in my youth. However, it is in reference for myself into the fact that I had begun working on the radio as early as 16 years old. Okay. And when I was a child, I was a latchkey kid. My mother was a working parent, a single parent. So when I got home from school, I was on my own and I had to entertain myself. I did that by listening to the radio and hearing DJs speaking, news radio, music radio, but the DJs always had a powerful voice, and at the time it was important to call up and talk to them, and you could get your voice heard around the community that you're in. And I, as a young, like I'm talking like 7, 8, 9 years old, would call radio stations and talk to the DJ just to hear my voice come over the radio. And at that time, you know, people didn't really hear their own voice as much as you do now with, you know, platforms, social media, and all these iPhones and such. So to hear my own voice was special, and I began to listen to how I sounded and wanted to sound a certain way and be cool like the DJs on the radio. And so when you were a kid, your parents would drive you home, take you to football practice, whatever it is. And so while they're driving around, they're listening to whatever kind of music they listen to. At some point, if you're in the car listening to the radio, you're going to hear Radio Rahim come on talking to the DJs. And so that's how the name came
That's quite an inspiring story, Radio Rahim. Now, it looks like you live boxing, you breathe boxing. Now,
that's right.
Last Friday, there was a big bout, you know, the WBC Africa Bridgerweight. You were there from the beginning until the very end. Now we're talking. Now, talk to me a bit about, you know, having an American boxer fly all the way to Africa, Ghana to be precise, to engage in such a bout, and what it means for Ghana boxing.
There were 2 African titles on the line, right? WBC, WBO. Yeah. That is an important element of this because they're African fighters, and those from the historic diaspora who may not have been born here but hail, like we all do, back to this continent, fighting on a global network to see what kind of talent this country can produce. And not only is it an incredible event and opportunity for the boxers, but for the world, it is priceless to understand the culture here of boxing and the spirit that this sport brings out in the people. And so Anthony Joshua, unified world champion, comes to Ghana, Nigerian in heritage, shows up in Ghana to support that movement. The fact that the continent as a whole is a powerhouse of talent, athletes that are incredible, who don't get the opportunity, who don't get to shine. And sure, you know, there's all kind of rivalries between nations on the continent, as anywhere else, but it's a healthy rivalry. It's a positive one. It's all family. And so for a Nigerian to come here to Ghana to support a Ghanaian broadcast that goes globally, it's important to have those intercontinental cooperation and acknowledgement and support. That's what the world has to understand, that Africa, yes, has many nations, many tribes, many cultures, but we are one. We are unified. And that moment that Joshua walked into that arena, it meant a lot, not just to Ghana, not just to the continent, but to the world. Don't forget, we had Amir Khan in the building. You had the president's son who promoted the fight. Sharaf Muhammad, without whom none of this would have taken place. I showed up here in March and went to Bookham and went to Jamestown and went to Bronx Boxing Gym and saw the talent and saw these athletes who had aspirations to be great, who could only imagine being on TV one day, much less global television for the world to see. And in just a few short months with that vision that Legacy Rise Sports had, They made that a reality.
Yeah.
We haven't seen a global broadcast on the continent of Africa in 50 years. You're talking about Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. And now I believe that show you saw last Friday, just a few days ago, is the beginning to Ghana being the door for global sports across the entire globe.
That's a profound statement. So you believe that could have been what ushers us into a new era where Ghana becomes the gateway for, African boxing once again?
It's the gateway for boxing, yes. And Africa will be a powerhouse in the sport. You're right. This is the beginning. This is the first. This is the time when people look at the continent and say, how much is there? The resources, as we know, are always rich. And the people have become accustomed to coming here, mining the resources, and taking them home for their own use and leaving us in the lurch with very little to count for. But this is no longer. We're not having this anymore. That we know around the world, global Africans is what I like to call myself and those of us who are historic on the diaspora. We are uniting our resources. We are using our influence. I am sitting here with you today, right now, so that I can speak to the people that this show reaches. But you know what's going to happen? As the people that are reached by this show in the region, it will also ripple out to the rest of the world. I'm born and raised in America. I now work most frequently in the United Kingdom, and I find my heart in Africa, and my home in Ghana. And so those ripples will affect everybody. So there's no way I'm coming to Accra and not sitting with you. You understand?
I get it. Yeah. Interesting, Radio Rahim. So we're currently in the studios and we are having an interesting conversation with one of the most renowned ringside announcers, Radio Rahim. He's currently here with me. Radio Rahim, now talk to me a bit about the bout on Friday, the quality you saw, in that title fight between Andrew Tabiti and then also Dixon. Perhaps you witnessed some of the undercards as well. There was Daniel Gosh, one of the best fighters, upcoming, promising fighter. What did you see?
Let me tell you something, bro. Gosh, Alote, stole the show. That was the fight of the night. Listen, all respect to the heavyweights. There's a big show on at the top of the card, as always. Tabiti and Dixon. They got the big names. They're the big boys. And it was fun. Tabiti pretty much just made easy work of Dixon. He did his best. He put every effort he could forward, but Tabiti was too much for him. However, that undercard fight, which for me could have been the main event, Alote and Gorsh, was like the whole crowd.
I think it was electric in the one.
It was the most electric. Every punch, they were living and dying with it. They saw themselves really as the representatives of their tribe, of their community, of the culture from which they came. And yes, they're both Ghanaian, they're both local, but you could see that it was from road to road who was cheering for whom and who was backing whom. And it was even, 50-50, and each man gave every bit that they had to produce and perform. And so in this fight, there were no losers. Yes, Alote won, and he should have gotten the victory, but the entire continent won because they saw what was possible here on this entire continent, not to mention what Ghana itself can produce, what the Jamestown community of boxing is able to provide as entertainment for the entire globe. This is a brilliant, classic fight. This will be looked back on in history as the first one in the gate that brought global boxing's attention to the continent. These boys should be proud, and Ghana should be proud of them.
Interesting. You are an expert in boxing, Radio Rahim. What do we have to do now? We've gotten to a certain stage where you believe now it's the dawn of a new era. Now, what do we have to do consistently to get there again?
You said it right there in the question, consistency. We must continue to produce, and we have to elevate our level. Whatever we did Friday was better than we've ever done, but it is not good enough for the next time. From that starting point, just as the world will find its way to Ghana and the eyes and ears of the boxing community and the community at large around the world will start to give us some attention, start to look at what's happening here, we have to continue to give them better and better every time they look. If you look at Ghana and look away and look back, the time you look back should be better than the first time you saw us. That is what is necessary. Consistency, constantly elevating, getting better every time. And with that, it's where do you go and you get something better every time you show up that you don't return to? No place. That is how you keep people coming. And I don't believe that what we saw on Friday night was the best that we have. It was just the best on that Friday night. We have better to do and better to give. And the people that we saw on Friday night, next time we see them, they will be better. That is what we need to continue to do. And I believe that we will and can do that.
Interesting. But you believe Africa has got what it takes to get a world champion in the next couple of years?
Azuma Nelson was sat ringside for this fight. He is the greatest African boxer in the history of boxing.
You think so? You
Absolutely.
know so.
Absolutely. He held that title for 10 years. He still remains living in the country from which he hails. He is an icon here. He is the kind of person who every fighter and any person who has ambitions beyond these shores should look at for guidance. He's a wise, wise man, and he's loyal to the continent, and he is at home in Africa, not just because he's African, but because he's Ghanaian. He sits here in your community as a resource. He's like a national treasure. People should always, anytime you get an opportunity, listen to this man's wisdom. He does interviews. I've sat with him a few times. Those interviews are out. Listen to what he says. Listen to how he advises you to pursue your boxing career and what's important for you to learn along the way so that you can be a superstar, so that you can be a world champion. Of course, Africa will produce more world champions, and it is because of those who have gone before them. So respect your elders. Understand that they have wisdom and take that guidance. You don't know everything.
Yeah.
The trainers here I haven't yet experienced the global level. They have to learn. So the trainers have to be humble so that they can learn. The fighters have to be humble so they can learn from the trainers. And then we will attract new and more talent. The more experience that the fighters have, the more experience that the trainers have, the better they will be in creating a system that can hone the craft and create a skill set that competes globally. So humility is first, consistency is most.
Humility and consistency. But what about that crowd? What about that for a crowd at the arena, Radio Rahim?
Unmatched. Unmatched. The atmosphere is unmatched. You are not getting this in Saudi Arabia with the biggest fights
Not in Riyadh.
in the world. In
You
Riyadh,
wouldn't get this.
there's no way. You're not
Belfast.
getting this in London. In London.
In Belfast.
In Belfast.
MGM.
You're not getting, like, Belfast is close.
MGM.
Because, no, absolutely not. Let me tell you what, man. The crowd had their own fireworks.
Yeah.
You show me where that happens any place else in the world.
Nowhere.
There was some point when it was pouring down rain in the fight, and they didn't have a canopy over the ring, so the rain was just coming down the ring, and they kept fighting. There was a knockdown, and the fighter falls down on his back, and there's a splash of water. It looked like a movie.
Whoa.
There's nothing that you will see, atmosphere-wise, energy-wise, that will be matched by any place on the planet as to what you get here in Accra. At that Bookham Arena, that is now hallowed ground in boxing. It is a coliseum for gladiators.
Colosseum for gladiators. But we get that on a weekly basis.
You dismiss it. Every week we do that.
Every week
they would love to do that any week anywhere else in the world.
There's a Bell 7-Star Professional Boxing League powered by IMAX Boxing Promotions, and every week you get the best fighters, from the various gyms compete, and I believe that's the best, one of the ways to,
Yeah, we have to keep all
champions.
the boxing programs going. We can facilitate talent everywhere. And in that arena, especially with Legacy Rise Sports, you have the ability to reach beyond the shores. You have the ability to give opportunity to fighters to learn and progress faster, because if Anthony Joshua walks in the arena and you've just won your fight or lost it, you have a couple of minutes to talk to the champ. You have a couple of minutes to glean some wisdom. He might give you just one pointer, but you take that back to the gym. When trainers see Joshua here and he sees talent, if you're in the gym and you're working your craft and you're good at what you do, but you need a little bit of help, he might be the one to be like, that kid's got something special.
Sure.
And you can't get that if he doesn't show up.
Sure.
And then you got Sharaf, who is constantly working with everybody around all of these gyms and figuring out who's got the talent, who should be on the show. And he can invite, you never know who's sitting ringside next time.
Sure.
So that is what I'm talking about. Yes, everybody's got a boxing program. Everybody who has some ambition or some talent should continue to be consistent, be humble so that you can be guided. And when you get your opportunity, shine.
Interesting. But let's talk a bit about you and Sharaf. What's, the relationship like, and how are you two combining? Because we know, yes, there's still AJ behind. There's Amir Khan, who was part of, the promotions. What are you guys doing, to elevate Ghana boxing again?
Listen, he's been so generous and welcoming that he brought me here in March. It was the first time I'd ever even been to the continent of Africa at all. So that was such an important moment for me in my life. Outside of boxing or anything that we might be able to do going forward, that was just one of those moments. Talk about a moment you'll never forget. That's a moment I'll never forget. The first time I touched down on the soils of Africa and where my heritage and ancestors are, and I don't know exactly from which they hail. I don't have people I can talk to and say, hey, that is my great-great-grandfather something, because in that transatlantic slave trade, we lost those records. So all I have is the generosity and welcoming of those who are here. And that's what the Muhammad family did for me. They gave me that opportunity to be here. And then since then, you know, I was so inspired by the gyms that he showed me, the fighters that he introduced me to, the ability of the arena to create such energy on fight night, that I immediately was passionate about doing anything I could do to help him do what the vision of Legacy Rise Sports is, which is what you saw Friday night. So whatever he asks of me, anything that I can do to contribute to that and make that successful, I do it. And so on Friday night, you saw Legacy Rise Sports vision come to reality. And that, again, is just the beginning. You just saw the door crack open, and it was that glorious. Imagine when it's wide open and the world is here to see it.
Wow, wow. Now let's talk a bit, in a matter of seconds about world boxing now. Usyk, Inoue, what do you make of where we're getting to? AJ dethroned, Usyk now the heavyweight king. What do you make of world boxing now?
They say that the 80s was the last golden era of boxing. I believe we're on the cusp of the platinum era. We're about to see really in time when talent and ability to entertain, which is important, and skills will pay the bills. We are seeing the matchups that we want to see when we want to see them, and that's always been a challenge in the sport. In the 80s, there was so much talent, so much in multiple weight classes, just impacted with talent. So you could go heavyweight, middleweight, lightweight, welterweight, wherever you were at, there was a great deal of talent at that time, and the promotion game was it wasn't a monopoly, but there were a few players, and so they were able to kind of mix and match a little bit, but it never really was a time when really there was a central organization that could continuously put on big match after big match after big match and develop the best talent and give those best talent fighters opportunities immediately. And that's the time that we're in now. It is a blessing to be a boxing fan right now, and I think it's only getting better.
Interesting, only getting better. Personally, what's your relationship with Dave Chappelle?
Dave Chappelle is my best friend.
He's your best friend?
Yeah.
AJ,
today is the day after AJ and I spent an entire day going around Ghana and just really, I think, cemented my relationship with him outside of boxing. I think he's a personal friend now. And because I'm a journalist and he's a fighter, we keep a distance. Like, I have to keep a distance that's professional.
Yeah.
And so I've covered him for 10 years as a athlete and me as a journalist. And I've always liked him. I think he's liked me. We've gotten on well professionally, but there wasn't a personal relationship there as we were colleagues. He had his job to do and I had my job to do.
What about Fury?
But he had his job to do and I had my job to do. But something changed in the last 24 hours. I was so moved that he came here and did what he did for Ghana. And I've seen the reaction of the people, how important it was to them. And then yesterday, we spent more time as personal friends than we have in 10 years.
Wow.
And I saw what kind of man he is, and I appreciate that. So yeah, it's funny you asked me that question right now, because 48 hours ago, it might have been a different answer. Yeah. But right now, I'd say that is my friend and colleague, in that order.
In that order.
You know what I mean? When we get back to the work, when we're in the arena, when we're doing press conferences, well, then he's my colleague. That's a friend outside of the sport.
Thank you so much. So that's Radio Rahim. Did I mention it right?
Did you? Radio, of course.
Radio. No, I want to mention like Deontay Wilder did it. Radio Rahim.
No, that's not it.
Till this day.
That's it.
Thanks so much. All right, so it's been an interesting tete-a-tete with Radio Rahim. Modern day, talking about modern day boxing journalist. This guy is top there, and I'm so honored and privileged to host him in the studios of Max TV. That's all we have for you today. Definitely tomorrow we'll be back again for more, and that's my guy.
Can I shout your name out?
Yeah.
Josiah
Okokwe.
Give me Josiah Okokwe.
Radio
Rahim Josiah Okokwe.
Yeah.
Till this day.
Till this day.
All right, we're out. Bye-bye.